Are you wondering what to play in Standard but have no idea where to start? Well, got $30? I've got a deck for you, and no, it's not red deck wins this time. Got deeper pockets than that? Well, I've got a different deck for you. Want to know how to pilot those decks against their most likely matchups? How about how to sideboard for them? Well, I've got a video for you, a video that covers everything you need to know to build your first Standard deck, whether you only want to spend $30 or spend whatever it takes for greatness. And that is this video. This video will cover everything you need to know to start playing Duskmourn Standard. I will provide 2 different competitive decks that I recommend, one which costs only about $30 and the other for players who are not constrained by a budget. Both of these decks are capable of winning your store championship or Friday Night Magic events. I'll even include how to sideboard with each deck against the top matchups in the Standard metagame. All of this is meant to prepare you to play a Standard format that is truly one of the best of all time. The best part? You can win awesome promos by playing this great format at your local game store's Standard events, such as the Standard Showdown, Friday Night Magic, and of course, the Store Championship. Check out this awesome Cowboy Bebop-inspired Disdainful Stroke promo that you could win at your game store's Standard Showdown between now and November 7th. Or just battle for one of these amazing Store Championship promos of Chromatic Sphere, or Reality Smasher, and this amazing Textless Void Winnower. The Store Championship is a small-scale, multi-round competitive Standard event held at local game stores around the world. You can meet players in your area, as well as win those sweet promo variants of your favorite Eldrazi. And of course, all while jamming exciting games of Standard. Duskmourn Store Championships begin October 12th, so go ahead and ask your local game store when they're holding their Store Championship, or check this video's description for a store finder link that will show you every Store Championship that will be held near you. Yes, the Store Championship is a competitive tournament, but that doesn't mean it's the Pro Tour. It's a super fun, friendly tournament that is accessible to players of all skill and experience levels, whether you're new to Magic or just new to Standard, or even if you're a player who's stepped away for a while and wants to jump back into the game. I can think of no better event than the Store Championship, except maybe just playing at Friday Night Magic. So if you don't already have a Standard deck, I have 2 deck recommendations here for you today. The first is a competitive, highly synergistic deck that you can put together for just about $30. The second is much more expensive for those players who have money to spend, and I believe it's one of the best decks in Standard as of the recording of this video. So let's begin, shall we? But real quick, have you noticed the weather getting colder? All you want to do is probably stay bundled up in bed, but there's a problem. Your mattress is old and lumpy and worn out, and you don't want to go through the hassle of getting a new one. That's because shopping for a new mattress is always a pain unless you are getting a new one from Helix Sleep, sponsor of today's video. Helix makes mattress shopping easy thanks to their signature sleep quiz that pairs you directly with the perfect mattress for your sleep style. They've got mattresses for all kinds of sleep needs, from their award-winning Luxe and Ultra Premium Elite collections to their Helix Plus, a mattress designed for big and tall sleepers. They even have the Helix Kids mattress, particularly designed for growing bodies and endorsed by child sleep and medical experts. Once you've chosen a mattress, Helix even delivers it in a box directly to your door with easy instructions for setting it up. You even get free shipping within the United States. And hey, if you feel nervous buying something you haven't tried, Helix has you covered on that too with their 100-night sleep trial. That's 3 whole months to make sure you love it. As for me, I love my Helix mattress. I've been sleeping on it for a couple years now, and the difference between the quality of my sleep with Helix compared to the monstrosity I used before is like night and day. It's like Ancestral Recall and One with Nothing. I can't imagine sleeping on anything else. So if you're looking for a new bed, check out Helix Sleep. You can click the link below or go to helixsleep.com/Tolarian to get 20% off of your Helix mattress. That's helixsleep.com/Tolarian. And thank you, Helix Sleep, for sponsoring this video. The first deck I'll discuss is an Aerous Enchantments deck built around the new Eerie mechanic, a twist on Theros' Constellation mechanic. This deck has been putting up impressive results on Magic Online in the early post-Duskborn Standard metagame, and it's a fantastic choice if you want to play Standard on a budget at your local game store. That's because the total deck only costs about $50, and $20 of that comes from just 4 cards, a playset of Flood Farm Verge. If you replace those Verges with 2 plains and 2 islands, your deck might be a little less consistent, but you can then build this entire standard deck for just about $30. The goal of this deck is fairly straightforward. You have a lot of enchantments and a lot of cards that trigger when you play enchantments. It's essentially a mix between an Enchantress deck and a Voltron deck in Commander. You've got a lot of the same you'd find in the 99 of these decks. Cost reducers, auras, card draw engines, interaction, protection, the whole works. Gremlin Tamer is an all-star in this deck. This exceptionally pushed enchantment's payoff is already a 2/2 for 2 mana, but it also creates additional 1/1s every time an enchantment enters play. If your opponent can't answer this card quickly, the sheer number of 1-power bodies it creates will run away with the game. The other card that offers buckets of value whenever your enchantments enter play is Entity Tracker, a 3-mana 2/3 with flash. Its ability should be familiar to anyone who has seen an Enchantress deck in Commander. Whenever an enchantment enters play, draw a card. Gremlin Tamer and Entity Tracker form the core of the deck, around which the rest of the deck fills in. Optimistic Scavenger helps provide a power and toughness boost anytime an enchantment enters play, while Inquisitive Glimmer is an enchantment itself that provides a cost reduction for your 2-mana enchantments. Another card draw engine in this deck also happens to be the strongest standalone card in the deck, Enduring Innocence. Enduring Innocence is hard for opponents to answer cleanly, as killing it once only brings it back as a non-creature enchantment. This card might look out of place given that it triggers off creatures entering, not enchantments, but remember that the creatures Gremlin Tamer creates also trigger Enduring Innocence's ability. If you curve Gremlin Tamer into Enduring Innocence, then the Innocence triggers Eerie for the Tamer, and then the Gremlin that the Tamer creates triggers your Innocence. Pretty neat synergy if I do say so myself. I'll briefly touch on the enchantment suite as well. Fey Flight and Shard Mage's Rescue provide a whopping 8 protection spells to counter your opponent's removal. Fey Flight also doubles as a way to evade your opponent's blockers. Ossification and Sheltered by Ghosts are the deck's main board interaction of choice. Sheltered by Ghosts is particularly powerful, hitting any non-land permanent and adding lifelink and ward to a creature of yours on top of that. Lastly, Ethereal Armor provides a massive power and toughness boost for just 1 mana, and it gives your creature first strike. Pair this with Fey Flight and you've got a terrifying evasive threat regardless of which creature you enchant. Hey, if you put a Sheltered by Ghosts on it as well, you've built your own flying, life-linking, first striking Baneslayer Angel. What's a Baneslayer Angel? Ask your parents. When you pilot this deck, the most important thing to keep in mind is your opponent's removal. With 8 one-time protection spells, you'll want to try to sequence your plays so that you have 1 available on the turn you cast your best card, Gremlin Tamer. That way, if your opponent goes to kill your Tamer, you can flash in your hexproof enchantment, which doesn't just save your Tamer from removal, but also creates a 1/1 on top of that. Entity Tracker is another high-impact card worth protecting, but because it has flash, that mitigates a lot of the danger of opposing removal. You will often cast it at the end of your opponent's turn after they tap out for their own play. Don't let the fact that this is a budget deck that you can get for only about $30 to $50 fool you. This is still a highly competitive deck that is going to give you a great time at either Friday Night Magic or your store championship. But what about those of you with deeper wallets that want to spend whatever it takes for greatness at any cost? Well, have I got another deck for you, a non-budget brew that is definitely capable of taking you to victory at your next in-store event. For those for whom budget is not a concern, the deck I recommend is a different Aerous deck, Aerous Tempo, featuring the busted but difficult to enable Abhorrent Oculus. This deck is an absolute blast to pilot. The goal of the deck is to put the high-impact threats of Abhorrent Oculus and Haughty Djinn into play, particularly through the reanimation spells Helping Hand and Recommission. Then you simply need Protect them and they take over the game. Abhorrent Oculus is a 3-mana 5/5 flyer that manifests dread on each of your opponent's upkeeps. The catch? You have to exile 6 cards from your graveyard in order to cast it. This card is as powerful as it is difficult to cast naturally. Exiling 6 spells from your graveyard is a lot to ask, but once you do get it into play, then you'll have 7 power worth of creatures in play for a very modest mana cost as soon as your opponent's next upkeep. Then, if they can't remove it immediately, your board will only continue to grow. The first Oculus is the hardest to get into play, but once you have one, things get much easier from there. First of all, manifesting Dread helps to fill your graveyard for future Oculuses. Oculi? Oculus-sci. Well, either way, if you do find an Oculus off your Manifest Dread, then you can put it into play without the cost of exiling cards from your graveyard, and then turn it face up whenever you'd like for just 3 mana. The other threat in the deck is Haughty Djinn, a card that's been on the fringes of Standard for a while now, despite being extremely powerful in its own right. A cost reducer for your spells, and a flying beater with a big ol' 4 toughness, but a Haughty Djinn in play makes this deck sing. There are a lot of 2-mana spells in the deck that are good when they cost 2 mana, but are obscene when they cast for just 1 mana. Haughty Djinn enables that, all while clocking your opponent quickly in the air. Both these cards are better the more mana you have up on the turn they enter. That's why this deck plays plenty of ways to reanimate them for cheap, with 4 Helping Hand and 2 Recommission. This makes it easier to hold up protection spells right away, shielding your Djinns and eyes from removal. You can, of course, just use these reanimation spells to bring back your threats that died of unnatural causes, but you also have a number of ways to get the threats into the yard to reanimate without casting them first. You can discard them to chart a course, or 3 steps ahead. You can bin them off of Moment of Truth, or mill them off of the Free the Face side of Pick Lock Prankster. You can even surveil them into the yard with Meticulous Archive. What's great about all these spells that fill your graveyard is they also make it easier to hard cast your Oculi and rapidly pump the power of your Djinns. The deck's biggest weakness is obviously Graveyard Hate, as both your main threats rely on the graveyard in order to function. Fortunately, there's not a lot of Graveyard Hate in the format right now. If you do run into it though, you've got a couple answers in the main deck and sideboard, as well as a few sideboard threats that can ignore Graveyard Hate. Now, whether you're playing Standard at your store championship or just at a Friday Night Magic, there's a wide range of decks you might run up against. However, a few of these decks will be much more common than others, and therefore it's worth spending a bit of time thinking about how your deck lines up against these particular strategies. Let's take a moment to talk about gameplay and sideboarding with each deck against some of the top decks in the Standard meta game. One of the most likely decks you'll be up against is Domain Ramp. Now, Domain Ramp was already a good deck before Duskmourn, but the addition of Overlord of the Hauntwoods pushed it to new heights. This is a highly consistent and resilient ramp deck that goes over the top of any other deck in Standard, provided it survives long enough to start casting its heavy hitter spells. Therefore, regardless of whether you're playing Aerous Enchantments or Aerous Tempo, your primary game plan will involve getting under your ramp opponent before they can go over you. If you're playing Aerous Enchantments, you should plan on mulliganing any hand that doesn't have Optimistic Scavenger, Gremlin Tamer, or Ethereal Armor. Without any of these cards, you just won't be able to put enough pressure to clock your opponent in time. Sunfall is your opponent's most threatening card, as you have no way to protect against it game 1. To sideboard, bring in 3 Negate, 2 Disdainful Stroke, and 2 Exercise, and board out 4 Enduring Innocence, 2 Ossification, and a Fey Flight. If you're running Aerous Tempo, you'll find you are much better suited in this matchup. Your threats clock your opponent quickly, and you play sufficient main deck counter magic to keep your opponent off balance. Remember that Cavern of Souls makes their angels uncounterable, so you'll have to rely on your removal spells to keep these creatures off the battlefield. They'll draw a lot of cards off their Atraxa, but hopefully you can kill them before they can make use of them. To sideboard for this, bring in 2 Exercise and 4 Negate while swapping out 2 Recommission, 1 Into the Flood Maw, 1 Chart a Course, and 2 Soul Partition. The next deck you're likely to run into is one that I actually recommended the last time we talked about standard deck building. And that deck is Gruul Prowess, which is not only still around, but still very powerful. The biggest change from that deck to now is the addition of Leyline of Resonance, which has proven to be quite powerful even when it's not enabling a turn 2 kill. All the pump spells appreciate getting doubled by the Leyline, and some players are even running Witch's Marks to loot away any redundant Leylines they happen to draw, which, thanks to Witch's Mark putting a Wicked Roll token on one of your creatures, also gets doubled by the Leyline. The Aerous Enchantments deck is well equipped to handle this deck. Thanks to Enduring Innocence and Sheltered by Ghosts, you have a lot of lifelink to recover from their onslaught. They don't play much, if any, main deck interaction, so it's safe to run out your high-impact cards even without backup. Fae Flight is awesome game 1 as a way to surprise block a slick shot show-off during combat, though many Gruul builds have dropped the show-off entirely. To sideboard, you're going to want to cut out 4 Inquisitive Glimmers and 2 Fae Flight and bring in 4 Elspeth's Smites and 2 Ossifications. For those on Aerous Tempo, game 1 can be tough, as you don't have any ways to permanently answer onboard creatures. Your best bet is to time your bounce spells for when your opponents target their creatures with pump spells. Your 8 flying creatures will usually be blockers until you've amassed enough power to kill your opponent in 2 hits. Your counter spells are great in this matchup, especially once you have a Djinn in play. To sideboard, you'll want to bring in 3 Elspeth's Smite and 3 Temporary Lockdown, and take out 2 Soul Partition, 2 3 Steps Ahead, and 2 Recommission. Another deck that I want to mention as a potential matchup is one that I haven't touched on before in this channel, but it's picked up a lot of steam in recent weeks, and that deck is Mono White Tokens. A very slow, very grindy deck that interacts well and accumulates lots of value thanks to its card advantage engines. Playing against this deck is similar to playing against Domain Ramp in that they are a Sunfall deck with a lot of endgame inevitability. The difference is that the endgame of the Tokens deck is not quite as big and splashy. You'll die to 1,000 cuts more so than one big angel or herd of beasts. If you're on Aerous Enchantments, you can keep up with the Tokens deck on the value front without too much trouble. Your opponent's removal suite doesn't do them any favors either. Lay Down Arms is strong and efficient, but given that it's at sorcery speed, your hexproof enchantments can easily protect against it. Get Lost is a bit more annoying from their side, since it can target your Sheltered by Ghosts to free a powerful permanent that you've exiled, but you at least have plenty of bodies to make use of the map tokens you receive in return. To sideboard, cut your 2 Ossifications, 4 Inquisitive Glimmers, and 1 Fae Flight for 2 Disdainful Strokes, 3 Negates, and 2 Exercise. The Tempo deck also has a nice game 1 matchup against this deck, as your counter magic is great and you can fly over their token army. Once you hit game 2 and have sideboarded, however, things are going to get tougher, as they'll certainly have Rest in Peace and Destroy Evils to make your life much harder. The sideboard Monastery Mentors will be very important, as will your Exercises. To sideboard, you're going to want to cut 2 Recommission, 2 Helping Hand, 1 Moment of Truth, and 4 Into the Flood Maw for 4 Exercise, 4 Negate, and 3 Monastery Mentors. And there you have it, everything you need to know to play Standard at your local game store. Whether you build one of these 2 decks, brew up something of your own, or just buy into one of the other Tier 1 decks in the format, I hope very much that you sign up for your local game store's Store Championship event, or at the very least, take part of a Friday Night Magic. It's a great way to meet other players in your area, help out your game store, and of course, play some fun games of a very fun format. And if you're looking to see some Standard gameplay in action, you can check out our Standard episode of Shuffle Up and Play, where I go up against Reed Duke. Check out all the action linked here or in this video's description. And hey, if you are looking for a new bed, look no further than Helix Sleep. Helix Sleep mattresses are fantastic. I own one. I've been sleeping on it for years and I absolutely love it. You'll love your Helix Sleep too. And right now, if you click the link below or go to helixsleep.com/Tolarian, you'll get 20% off of your Helix mattress. That's helixsleep.com/Tolarian. Thank you, Helix Sleep, for sponsoring this video.
Next time on Shuffle Up and Play.
Today, the Proliferate Cube.
This is a cube where dice are the most important thing, and the Proliferate mechanic lets you do different stuff with them. So we have energy, we have poison counters, all kinds of cool stuff going on.
Carmen, if you think about it, you've created the cubiest cube because your cube needs the most little cubes.
Oh my god!
All right, third card.
Oh!
Wow, we're so happy and excited. It's so great. It's
Playing a Johnny, Caller of the Pride.
I'm so dead.
Stop.
I'm so dead.
Ideally. What's your life total?
Alexa, play Sandstorm by Darude.
Why is it always Sandstorm by Darude?